Well, hello once more, everyone. I hope this new episode of Empire Coins and Collectibles finds you well and always out there looking. Because we know if you're not out there looking, you're not finding. These collections, these coins, these tokens never come to you and knock on your door. You have to be out there and expend a little energy and perhaps a little money to acquire these coins and tokens. And notice I'm adding something to the statement, not just coins, but tokens. And that's the topic of our episode today. We went through a very trying time back in the 1860s. That little episode was called the Civil War. And there's a lot of interesting things that went on besides the war. The everyday person was impacted in some very unique and specific ways besides the fighting that went on. And it's a tragic occasion for our country. I believe the numbers were there were more people killed in the Civil War than in the combination of all the wars we've fought since then. Believe me, I believe in peace and endeavoring to hold the peace. But we do have some aspects in our history that had to happen so that we would become a better nation. But we're not going to go into that aspect of it. We're going to go and look at tokens that came out of the situation. But before we go there, if you could, please like, share, and subscribe. So there is always a backstory. Now, how did I get into collecting Civil War tokens? These were tokens that were produced from around 62, 63, 64, 65, and upwards to 66 that were a direct result of the war between the northern states and the southern states. So how did I come about collecting those? It was quite by accident. As you know, I'm a treasure hunter. My focus, of course, is mainly coins and tokens. I do collect sports cards, but that's an aside, and I do collect stamps, but not as fervently as I do coins and tokens. So I went out treasure hunting and went into a Goodwill store near my house. At the time, the Goodwill stores were holding auctions Saturday morning. And so they would preview what would be up for sale all week. And then at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, whichever time it was, Saturday morning, they would hold the auction. And it was a live auction. But however, people could put their names on a roster and make a bid, and their bid would be used in the auction that occurred in the store up until somebody exceeded it that was present in the store. So the week before this particular auction took place, I happened to go into the Goodwill looking for something that might be a little treasure I could add to my collection. And you never know what you're going to find. But I went up to the glass case, and lo and behold, there was this tray of what looked like coins. So I asked the attendant if I could see those coins. And I knew she told me they would be up for auction Saturday morning. So I went in and looked at those, and they said Civil War tokens. And there were about 40, 43, 44 Civil War tokens, different types that were up for auction as a lot. But embedded in the lot were some old broken down pocket watches as well. Now that's going to become a key fact when we actually get to the auction. These pocket watches really were not worth hardly any money. I mean, you probably could have picked up all of them because none of them ran for $40 or $50. And there's probably 5 or 6 of them. And they weren't precious metal. They weren't 14 karat gold. They were just nickel plated type frames for those pocket watches. So I went home immediately and began doing some research on the Civil War tokens. And that history was rich. What happens during wartime, and this also happened in World War II, a lot of the metals that were used for coinage, like copper and nickel and others, are used to produce goods to fight the war. And in the 40s, the nickel and copper were used in World War II. And so that resulted in us having some silver composition, 40% silver nickels, kind of interesting, and steel pennies. But back in the 1860s, what happened is all that metal that would be used in the war effort copper, and other types of metal was pretty much taken out, and it affected the production of coinage for commerce. And so what occurred is that different stores or businesses would go to private mints, and they would have coinage produced about the size of an Indian cent. And they were called store cards. They would advertise their business and or some statement about their support or opposition of what was going on during the war. And there were some interesting slogans that occurred in those types of tokens that were produced in lieu of coins. Now, remember, these stores didn't have any right from the legal aspect of it to produce coins that could be used as currency, but they were a substitute, and businesses around town would accept them in lieu of a cent because they were made of copper. They were made about the same size as a cent. But some of the slogans were like "Union Forever," or anyone who would tear the Union down, take them out. And I won't say what was said there because they would probably bar this particular episode of Empire Coins and Collectibles, but it would say you would take care of them on the spot. I'll show you that coin or that token, and you can read it for yourself. But some interesting things occurred. Not everybody that created the master dies for these tokens knew how to spell. Instead of spot, they said spoot. They spelled out spoot. And it's kind of interesting. There are rotational errors, there are die cracks, there are cuds all over these tokens. So it's a very rich environment, and some of them are pretty rare and some of them are pretty pricey. So enough of all that. I'm going to change the camera and you're going to see some of what I was able to acquire. Let me pause on that just for a second. The rest of the backstory is I went immediately to Goodwill and was there Saturday morning for the auction. And I was going to try to win this collection of about 44 Civil War tokens. So the auction began and the bid went to $30, $40, $50, $60, $70, and I was top bid. And I was feeling pretty good because here I was going to acquire about 44 Civil War tokens, and there were a few hard time tokens, which I'll get into in a different episode. Those are from the 1820s, 30s, and 40s. But pretty soon the bidding stopped, and she was going once, and I was getting more excited as she was saying going twice, and then somebody jumps in and says $90. And I thought, well, where did this come from? And so I bid 100, and we kept going back and forth. And pretty soon the bid was $460. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, what did I get myself into here? What's Miss Empire going to think about me acquiring this collection? And when I got to 460, the other guy said, all I wanted was the pocket watches. And really, the pocket watches weren't worth anything. Had I known that, I would have told him before the auction ever began, if I won the auction, I'd give it to him, you know? But unfortunately, that's what auctions do. People are going in for these lots and they're bidding to acquire those lots based on what they're willing to pay. But I won the auction. And as the guy was going out, I said, you know, I was after the coins. I wasn't after the pocket watches. And he said, yeah, I understand, but you went a little higher than I was willing to pay. Had I thought, I would have offered him the pocket watches if he had wanted to buy them from me. But I was happy to get the overall collection. I took them home, and then I went to a kind of an Antiques Roadshow weekend, but it wasn't the Antiques Roadshow. It was the Arlington Coin Club's appraisal day. And so I took those coins in, and some of the experts that were experts in tokens and Civil War tokens and hard time tokens looked at them, and they said, these are probably worth in the neighborhood of around $1,600 to $1,800. Of course, I had a big smile on my face. That was around 2007. It wasn't long after that I started watching the tokens as they were auctioned off, not mine, but others, on eBay, and the prices kept rising and rising because there's different combinations of averses and reverses, and some of them were very rare. And if you go onto the Civil War token site, you'll find out how to find out which ones are rare, which ones are not so rare. Let me see. Can I lay my hands on my book? I have a very large book of tokens, and I think I've shared this with you before, but this is the book here. And it lists all the tokens produced here in the United States. And there's a big section on Civil War tokens. And so I was able to go in and characterize some of the tokens that I had. Many of the tokens that I had purchased in the lot were already documented. And then after that, I'd go around to the different coin shops and ask, do you have any hard time tokens or Civil War tokens? And when they did, I would acquire what I could. But if you're into collecting Civil War tokens or any other type of tokens, I would strongly advise you to get a reference book, because then you'll know what is rare and what is not. Okay, so let's go to the tabletop camera. So hopefully now you're seeing this. This binder here, it says coin binder. It has slots for 80 coins, and it's almost filled with Civil War tokens. And there's a few other types of tokens like hard time tokens. I have another binder that's fully hard time tokens. So what I wanted to do is just kind of turn the light on over here and just begin to show you some of them. And then I will put them under the coin microscope so that you can read for yourself some of the slogans. So let's just see if you can see this. Will it focus? Yeah, it's kind of trying to focus. It says first in war, first in peace. Union forever, 1863. Now that's what's actually on the token. First in war, first in peace. And you can't really see that, but I'm going to set it aside and we'll come back to it and look at it under the coin microscope. Here's one, 1863. Will it focus? Come on, focus for us. Sometimes the light is not just right. Let me move the light around. Will it focus now? Come on, focus for us. There it is. 1863 Civil War token, New York. And the obverse, you can actually see New York written on it, right? That token was out of New York City, right, during the Civil War. We'll set that down. Here's another one. This one, 1863, and there's a cut on it. You look at the arrow, you can see that cut at the top, and look at the flag there. Just a beautiful coin. And of course, we'll be able to read the slogan when we get it under the coin microscope. Here's one, 1864. Look at that horse on the pedestal. Federal Union, it must be preserved. I mean, you know, it was a very contentious time and there was a lot of conflict. And there were actually people in the North doing people in the South, helping them provide war goods to fight the North, which is kind of crazy, but it did occur. So there was all sorts of slogans that these store cards had on them, and people would circulate these tokens as currency in lieu of like the Indian cents that were hard to find. But we'll look at that under the coin microscope, right? And the images they use are all quite interesting. Here's another one. This is this metal price is 1 cent. So it says must and shall be preserved, the Union. Again, these are tokens from the North. There are similar tokens from the South, but there are all sorts of slogans to the consumer of these tokens and the users of these tokens saying that we must stand firm and preserve the Union. This next one is kind of interesting, and this is where we may get into a little bit of contention, and I don't want to violate any YouTube rules, but let me see if I can get that thing to focus and maybe you can read it yourself. This is something, the flag of our Union, and the reverse says, if anyone attempts to tear it down, something them on the spot. I won't say what that something is, but you can read it. It's right about there just above my finger. So, I mean, they were pretty serious. But see, it says spot down here. Well, there's a variation off that. Let me show you this one. Here's another one that says similar to it. If anybody attempts to tear it down, something them on the spot. That's POT, and that's actually right on the token itself. And then here's the reverse of it, right? And there's all sorts of errors. Now here's the one that is a really interesting error, and we'll see if we can get it to focus. Can you read that? There's that quotation, something him on the spoot. They didn't spell spot right. And it's really funny because, I mean, the people that engraved and created the dies for these tokens, some of them did not know how to spell, and they thought they did, and they created errors in this coinage. Let's go ahead and look at this error, this slogan that says something him on the spoot. Let's see if we can get it to come into focus. Here it is. If, look right down here at the bottom of the coin. If anybody attempts to tear it down, meaning the union, something him on the spot. See, I can't say this word right here, but you can see that people were pretty serious. Just a regular layperson that wasn't involved at all in the war, they were very fervent about preserving the Union and all that it stood for. It was a very sad time in our history. Let's look at the other side. The flag of our Union. See, 1863. Gosh, that's 100 and then 37, 137, and then 23, 140, 160 years old. Wow. That's an old token, isn't it? But it was used as a cent in currency. Here's another one. This one is correctly spelled. So let's take a look at it. The flag of our Union, 1863. And then the reverse says, let me get the toothpick, if anybody attempts to tear it down, then they say something like, you do this, him on the spot. So they're very, I don't know, it's a serious topic for them. And there was great concern that all that the United States stood for, the Constitution and everything, would be thrown away had the other side won. All right, let's look at the other one. This one's similar to that one. This says, okay, this metal, 1 cent. So it's actually not 1 cent. It's not currency, but it was circulated as 1 cent. And then here it is. Let's see if I can find the start of it. Union must and shall be preserved. Very serious, isn't it? Here's another one. This is the Federal Union. It must be preserved. And this is the backside. Kind of looks like an Indian cent or Liberty there, but it's Indian cent. But it's not. It's a Civil War token. Look at this one. The Federal Union, it must be preserved. 1864 is during the heart of the Civil War. Here's another one. Basically, the flag of our Union, 1863. Look at that. It's a beautiful token. Looks like it may have some cracks in it as well. And then the other side, if anybody attempts to tear it down, something him on the spot. See, I can't say this word right there. That'll get me in trouble with YouTube, and I don't want that. But that is a slogan that was used in protest to what was going on in the Civil War. Preserve the Union. Here's one, the flag of our Union, 1863. Wow, look at these die cracks. This one is really interesting in that it's from the Civil War, but there's a die crack all through the date. And then look at this cud up here. So this has got a lot going for it. Die cracks and cuds. Here's the reverse. Dick's is the company, right? And here's that slogan again. If anybody attempts to tear it down, something him on the spot. Very common theme in these Civil War tokens. Here's another one. Let me turn it around. This is the one that's got New York on it. 1863, this Civil War token was produced and used in New York City. Look at that. How about that? Wonderful. And then here's another one, 1863. First in war, first in peace, Union forever. So what this is saying, basically, Union forever. Our freedoms are guaranteed by the Constitution. Union stands for the rights of the individual. And then here on this side, first in war, first in peace. First in war to preserve the peace. So again, these verses and reverses of these particular Civil War tokens were used in different combinations, and some of them are rarer than others. I'm going to go back to the tray table. Now, these are what we just looked at. These are just a small sampling of all this. There's pages and pages of Civil War tokens. I've just taken out a few that are part of our history. And again, it's a very sad part of our history. There's more people killed in the Civil War in the United States than any other war. And actually, I believe in the aggregation of all wars. But in any case, it is part of our history, and we learned something from it. And something very, very important happened. And that was the Emancipation Proclamation, the elimination of slavery, which was and is a crime against humanity. Look at this. So I love the history of this, and it's a very unique collecting area. And if you want to collect something that is both history related and interesting, and it has all sorts of, let me move this out of the way. It has all sorts of slogans and mottos, and it actually gives you kind of an insight into what people are thinking during these tragic times. You'll find it very much engaging, and you'll get absorbed in it during the research and just reading all about it. There's another set of tokens that we'll go into at a later date. They're called hard time tokens, and some of those hard time tokens are heartbreaking. Some of them are about the banking industry. Yeah, there was banking problems back then, but some of them are tokens that says they're in opposition of slavery, and the slogan says, "Am I not a man?" or "Am I not a woman?" This was actually highlighting those crimes against humanity when slavery was rampant, and thank goodness that was eliminated, and we are truly a country based on freedom. Now, we don't always get things right, but in the long arc of history, we always strive to do better, and we can do that together, going forward together. All right, my friend, hopefully you have found this very interesting. Perhaps you found a new avenue to collect in that's related to coins. Let's go to one last thing. I want to share my screen. If you are interested in collecting Civil War tokens, click on coins, right? You can come up here and search by category. So you'd click on coins and paper money. This screen will come up. And then to find the Civil War tokens, you click on exonumia. Exo is out of, numia is coins, right? So exonumia means something other than coins, which is really pointing to tokens. So we'll click on exonumia, and then we will go down to Civil War tokens. And there are hard time tokens too, we'll get into a little bit later, different episode. So you can actually buy these tokens. Some of them are very pricey. Some of them are very affordable. But you can buy them and start building your collection of Civil War tokens. Okay, my friend and friends, hopefully I'll have more than one friend. Let me stop the share here. Stopping the share, we'll go back to the main camera. I hope, again, this has been very interesting for you. And please join us again on our next episode. And also look forward to our shorts on coin collecting. That helps us also grow the channel, and it spreads the access that other people may not otherwise see us. Tell your friends and family members about us and help us on this journey. You take care of yourself, and I do look forward to seeing you again in the next episode. All the best.